Sup 5. Brutal Truths. Why Good Men Get Used and Thrown Away. Machiavelli. They lied to you about what it means to be a man. Your father, your teachers, society, they all fed you the same script. Be nice, be respectful, treat women like queens, work hard and keep your head down. Be the good guy, the reliable guy, the guy who's always there. And one day, they said, you'll be rewarded for it. One day, she'll see your value. One day, your loyalty will pay off. One day, being the good man will be enough. But here you are, watching the girl you treated like gold end up with a guy who treats her like an option. Seeing your so-called friends only hit you up when they need something. Watching men with half your integrity get twice the respect. And you're sitting there wondering what the hell you did wrong. You followed the rules. You played the game the way they told you to play it. So why are you losing? Let me tell you something that's going to sting. You're not losing because you're not good enough. You're losing because you're too good. And in a world that mistakes kindness for weakness, your goodness has made you a target. Every time you put her needs before yours, hoping she'd notice. Every time you showed up for people who wouldn't cross the street for you. Every time you bit your tongue when you should have spoken up. You weren't building respect. You were building a reputation as someone who can be used. And the most dangerous part? You probably still think that's what honor looks like. You probably still believe that being the bigger man means letting people walk on you. You probably still tell yourself that real men don't complain, don't set boundaries, don't demand respect. Brother, that's not honor. That's self-destruction dressed up as virtue. Today, I'm going to show you 5 brutal truths that Machiavelli understood 500 years ago. Truths that will make you uncomfortable. Truths that will challenge everything you were taught about being a good man. But if you're tired of being the guy everyone uses and nobody respects, if you're done being the emotional tampon while other men get the romance, if you're sick of watching your loyalty get rewarded with betrayal, then you need to hear this. This isn't about becoming a bad person. This is about stopping bad people from treating you like you're disposable. So drop this in the comments right now. I am done being used. Let's get into it. Here's the first brutal truth, and it's going to hurt. When you make yourself too available, too accommodating, too understanding, women don't see a good man. They see a man with no options. Think about that. Really let it sink in. You think you're showing her you care by always being there, by dropping everything when she calls, by being patient when she's confused about what she wants, by understanding when she needs space but still wants your attention. But here's what's actually happening in her mind. She's thinking, if he has nothing better to do than wait around for me, what does that say about him? If he'll accept whatever scraps of affection I throw his way, what does that say about his value? If he has no standards, no boundaries, no other women interested in him, why would I treat him like a prize? You think you're being devoted. She thinks you're desperate. You think you're being patient. She thinks you're weak. You think you're being understanding. She thinks you're a pushover. And I'm not saying this to be cruel. I'm saying this because it's the truth that nobody wants to tell you. Look at the guys who get the girl. Look at the men who women actually chase, who women actually respect, who women actually choose. Are they the ones who are always available? Are they the ones who never say no? Are they the ones who put her on a pedestal and worship the ground she walks on? Hell no. They're the ones who have boundaries. They're the ones who have standards. They're the ones who make her feel lucky to have their attention, because their attention isn't free. I can already hear some of you. But that's playing games. That's manipulative. That's not authentic. Brother, you know what's actually manipulative? Pretending you have no self-respect when you do. Acting like you have unlimited time and energy when you don't. Saying yes when you mean no because you're afraid she'll leave if you stand up for yourself. That's manipulative. That's lying. Having boundaries isn't playing games. It's called having a spine. Here's what happens when you're always available. You become furniture. You become the guy she texts when she's bored. The guy she calls when she needs something. The guy she keeps around for emotional support while she's out dating men who actually excite her. And you tell yourself it's okay, because at least you're in her life. At least she talks to you. At least you have a chance. But you don't have a chance. You have a role. And that role is the supporting character in someone else's love story. Women respect men who respect themselves. Women desire men who have options. Women choose men who make them compete, not men who compete for them. And until you understand that, until you accept that, you're going to keep getting used. You're going to keep being the friend she cries to about other guys. The nice guy who finishes last. The good man who gets thrown away the moment someone more exciting comes along. Machiavelli said it 500 years ago. The man who makes himself universally available makes himself universally disposable. Your availability is killing your value. Your niceness is destroying your attractiveness. Your patience is being mistaken for weakness. And the longer you stay in that pattern, the harder it gets to break out of it. So here's what you do. You stop being available 24/7. You stop dropping everything every time she reaches out. You stop accepting whatever treatment she gives you with a smile. You start having a life that's bigger than waiting for her attention. You start having standards that actually mean something. You start being the kind of man who women are lucky to have access to, not the kind of man who feels lucky to get her attention. And watch what happens. Watch how differently she responds when you're not always there. Watch how her interest spikes when she realizes you have other priorities. Watch how she starts chasing when she's no longer the center of your universe. Because attraction isn't logical. Attraction doesn't reward the most devoted guy. Attraction rewards the guy who has enough self-respect to not be devoted to someone who doesn't deserve it. Drop this in the comments. My time has value. Now let's talk about the second brutal truth. You've been taught that being a good man means being loyal, staying committed, standing by people even when it's hard, never giving up on relationships, never walking away, always being the rock that everyone can depend on. And that sounds noble, doesn't it? That sounds like what a real man should do. But here's the brutal truth they never told you. Your loyalty is only valuable if it's given to people who deserve it. And most people don't. Think about the relationships in your life right now. The woman you've been chasing who keeps you on the hook but never fully commits. The friends who only call when they need something. The family members who demand your time but never appreciate it. The co-workers who take credit for your work. The people who know you'll always be there so they never have to try. Now ask yourself this. Would they do for you what you do for them? If you stopped reaching out, would they reach out to you? If you needed help, would they drop everything the way you do for them? If you set a boundary, would they respect it, or would they guilt you into backing down? Be honest. You already know the answer. Your loyalty is being weaponized against you. People know you won't leave so they don't have to treat you well. They know you'll forgive so they don't have to change. They know you value the relationship more than they do, so they have all the power. And you're sitting there wondering why you feel so drained, so unappreciated, so taken for granted. It's because you are. Machiavelli understood something most men never figure out. Loyalty without reciprocity is slavery. When you're loyal to people who aren't loyal to you, you're not being honorable. You're being a doormat. When you stand by people who wouldn't stand by you, you're not being strong. You're being stupid. When you keep investing in relationships where you're the only one investing, you're not being a good man. You're being a fool. And I know that's hard to hear. I know you were raised to believe that real men don't quit, that real men stick it out, that real men honor their commitments. But what about when the other person doesn't honor theirs? What about when you're the only one committed to the relationship? What about when your loyalty is being repaid with disrespect, neglect, or betrayal? At what point does your loyalty to others become disloyalty to yourself? Here's what they don't tell you about loyalty. It's supposed to be mutual. It's supposed to be earned. It's supposed to be given to people who value it. But you've been programmed to give it away for free to anyone, regardless of how they treat you. Because walking away would make you the bad guy. Walking away would mean you're not a good man. Walking away would mean you failed. But let me flip that script for you. What if staying is the failure? What if loyalty to undeserving people is the real weakness? What if the strongest thing you can do is walk away from anyone who doesn't respect what you bring to the table? That's not giving up. That's having standards. That's not being disloyal. That's being loyal to yourself. Look at the men you actually respect, the men who command authority, the men who people actually value. Do they stick around in one-sided relationships? Do they keep chasing women who treat them like options? Do they maintain friendships with people who only take? No. They walk away. They cut people off. They protect their energy like it's the most valuable resource they have. Because it is. Your time, your energy, your loyalty, these aren't infinite resources. Every moment you give to someone who doesn't deserve it is a moment stolen from someone who does. Every ounce of energy you pour into a one-sided relationship is energy you could be investing in yourself, in your goals, in people who actually appreciate you. Every day you stay loyal to people who aren't loyal to you is a day you're betraying yourself. And here's the part that really stings. The people you're so loyal to, they don't even see it as loyalty. They see it as weakness. They see a man who won't leave no matter how badly they treat him. They see a man who will always be there so they never have to try. They see a man with no options, no standards, no self-respect, and they treat you accordingly. You think you're being noble by standing by her even though she's still texting her ex. You think you're being a good friend by always being there even though he only calls when he needs something. You think you're being strong by never walking away. But they don't see nobility. They don't see strength. They see a man they can use. And they're right. Machiavelli said the wise man does at once what the fool does finally. Eventually, you're going to walk away from these people. Eventually, you're going to realize they don't deserve your loyalty. Eventually, you're going to hit your breaking point. The question is, how much of your life are you going to waste before you get there? So here's what you do. You audit your relationships. You look at every person in your life and ask, is this mutual? Does this person invest in me the way I invest in them? Do they respect my time, my energy, my loyalty? And if the answer is no, you walk. No explanation, no second chances, no hoping they'll change. You just walk. Because your loyalty is valuable, and it should only go to people who treat it that way. Drop this in the comments. I choose reciprocity. Now the third brutal truth, and this one is going to make a lot of people angry. You think being a good man means being agreeable, never causing conflict, always keeping the peace, being understanding even when you're being disrespected, biting your tongue to avoid drama, letting things slide to keep relationships smooth. And you've convinced yourself that this is what mature, evolved, high-value men do. That real strength is staying calm, being the bigger person, not letting things get to you. But here's the brutal truth. When you never cause conflict, when you never push back, when you never stand up for yourself, people don't see maturity. They see a man who can be disrespected without consequences. And humans, especially women, are biologically wired to test for that, to push boundaries, to see what they can get away with, to find out if you're actually strong or just pretending to be. Think about it. She shows up late and you say it's fine. She cancels plans and you say you understand. She disrespects you in front of friends and you laugh it off. She talks to other guys and you tell yourself you're secure enough to not be bothered. Every single time you think you're being mature. You think you're being confident. You think you're being the bigger man. But what you're actually doing is teaching her that disrespecting you has no cost. And then you wonder why she doesn't respect you. You wonder why she keeps pushing further. You wonder why she eventually leaves you for a guy who has half your patience, but twice your backbone. It's because you never showed her where the line was. You never made her afraid of losing you. You never gave her a reason to treat you better. Machiavelli understood this. He said men should be either treated generously or destroyed, because they take revenge for slight injuries but cannot do so for grave ones. What does that mean? It means people remember how you respond to disrespect. If you let small disrespect slide, they'll keep testing you with bigger ones. If you never show teeth, they'll assume you don't have any. If you never make someone afraid of losing you, they'll never value having you. And I'm not saying you should be aggressive. I'm not saying you should be angry. I'm not saying you should blow up over every little thing. But I am saying that people need to know there are consequences for disrespecting you, that there are lines they can't cross, that your patience has limits, That access to you is a privilege that can be revoked. Because here's what nobody tells you. Conflict is how respect is established. Boundaries are how relationships stay healthy. Pushback is how you communicate your value. And men who avoid conflict at all costs are men who get walked over at every turn. Look at the relationships you admire. The ones where both people actually respect each other. The ones where there's real attraction, real passion, real commitment. Do those relationships avoid conflict? Hell no. They have conflict. They have disagreements. They have moments where one person pushes and the other person pushes back. But that conflict is what keeps the relationship honest. That's what keeps the respect alive. That's what prevents the relationship from becoming one person using the other. Now look at your relationships. The ones where you're always the one compromising, always the one apologizing, always the one backing down to keep the peace. Is there respect there? Is there passion? Is there actually a relationship, or is there just you accepting whatever treatment someone decides to give you that day? You've been taught that causing conflict makes you difficult, makes you toxic, makes you not worth the trouble. But here's the real truth. Men who never cause conflict are men who never command respect. Men who always keep the peace are men who never have peace. Men who avoid confrontation are men who live in constant resentment. And that resentment? That's what's actually destroying your relationships. Not the conflicts you're avoiding. The resentment you're building up by never standing up for yourself. The anger you're suppressing by always being understanding. The contempt you're developing for people because you're letting them walk all over you and blaming them for taking advantage of what you're offering. You can't respect someone you can walk all over, and she can't respect you if you never push back. It's not her fault. It's biology. It's psychology. It's how humans work. We respect what we can't fully control. We desire what has the power to reject us. We value what we might lose. When you're agreeable all the time, when you never cause problems, when you never stand your ground, you become predictable. You become safe. You become boring. And boring doesn't inspire respect. Boring doesn't create attraction. Boring gets taken for granted and eventually replaced. Machiavelli said it's better to be impetuous than cautious, because fortune is a woman and it's necessary to hold her down and beat her. Now, I'm not advocating violence, obviously, but here's the principle. Life, relationships, women, they respond to boldness. They respond to strength. They respond to men who are willing to risk conflict, to stand up for themselves. So here's what you do. The next time someone disrespects you, you don't let it slide. You don't make excuses for them. You don't convince yourself it's not a big deal. You address it, calmly, clearly, firmly. You make it known that this isn't acceptable, that there are consequences, that they just moved closer to losing access to you. And if they respond with guilt, with gaslighting, with acting like you're overreacting, that tells you everything you need to know. That tells you they were counting on you being too weak to push back. That tells you they don't actually respect you. And that tells you it's time to walk. Drop this in the comments. I stand up for myself. Now let's hit the fourth brutal truth. And this is where it gets really uncomfortable. You think providing value makes you valuable. You think being useful makes you needed. You think solving her problems makes her need you. So you become the guy who fixes things. The guy who has answers. The guy who's always there with solutions, with support, with whatever she needs. You become the emotional handyman, the free therapist, the on-call problem solver. And you think this is building something. You think she's going to realize how much she needs you. You think all this value you're providing is going to translate into respect, into attraction, into commitment. But here's the brutal truth. The more you try to make yourself needed, the less you're actually wanted. Think about it. When you're the guy who solves all her problems, what are you actually communicating? You're communicating that your value is functional, that you're useful, like a tool, like a hammer or a screwdriver. You're needed when there's a problem, but when there's no problem, you're back in the toolbox. And nobody fantasizes about their tools. Nobody desires their utilities. Nobody feels passion for their handyman. Women don't want to need you. They want to want you. And those are completely different things. Need is obligation. Want is desire. Need is practical. Want is emotional. Need is what you feel for your mechanic. Want is what you feel for someone who excites you, challenges you, makes you feel alive. When you position yourself as the problem solver, as the reliable guy, as the one who provides all this value, you're putting yourself in the need category. You're making yourself functional. And functional doesn't create attraction. Functional creates dependency. And dependency without desire is how you end up being the guy she keeps around but never actually chooses. Machiavelli understood this about power dynamics. He said the prince who bases his power on the people's need for him will lose power the moment they no longer need him. The same applies to you. The moment she figures out how to solve her own problems, the moment someone else starts providing that value, the moment she doesn't need your help anymore, what do you have left? What's actually keeping her there? And here's the really painful part. While you're busy being useful, being helpful, being the guy who adds value to her life, she's out desiring men who do none of that. She's attracted to guys who create uncertainty, who are a little bit unpredictable, who don't bend over backwards to solve her problems. And you're sitting there confused. How can she be into him when I do so much more for her? How can she choose him when I provide so much value? Because you're not understanding the game. The game isn't about who provides the most value. The game is about who creates the most emotion. And solving problems doesn't create emotion. It creates gratitude. And gratitude isn't attraction. Gratitude is what you feel for your assistant, not your lover. Look at how she treats you versus how she treats the guys she's actually attracted to. With you, it's all about what you can do for her. Can you help with this? Can you give advice on that? Can you be there when she needs support? You're the guy she goes to when she has problems. But the other guys, she doesn't need them to do anything. She just wants to be around them. That's the difference. And the worst part? The more value you provide, the more entitled she becomes. The more you solve her problems, the more problems she brings you. The more you're there for her, the less she appreciates it. Because unlimited value has no value. When you give without limits, without reciprocity, without her having to earn it, it stops being special. It becomes expected. You think you're building investment, but investment only matters if it might be withdrawn. You think you're building connection, but connection requires mutual exchange, not one-sided service. You think you're building attraction, but attraction doesn't come from being useful. It comes from being desired for who you are, not what you do. So here's what you need to understand. Stop trying to make yourself needed. Start making yourself wanted. Stop solving her problems unless she's solving yours. Stop being available to provide value unless she's providing value back. Stop positioning yourself as the useful guy and start positioning yourself as the guy who has his own life, his own mission, his own purpose that doesn't revolve around being helpful to her. Because the man who's busy building his own empire doesn't have time to solve everyone else's problems. The man who has options doesn't need to make himself useful to keep someone around. The man who respects himself knows that his value isn't in what he can do for others. It's in who he is. And women can feel that difference. They can tell when a man is trying to earn his place versus when a man knows his place. They can tell when a man is providing value from abundance versus from scarcity. They can tell when a man is useful versus when a man is desirable. And they respond completely differently. Drop this in the comments. I am wanted, not needed. Now the fifth and final brutal truth, and this is the one that ties everything together. You think being a good man is about sacrifice, about putting others first, about being selfless, about giving more than you take, about proving your worth through how much you're willing to suffer for others. And every movie, every song, every story you've ever heard has reinforced this. The hero sacrifices himself. The good guy gives everything. The real man puts everyone else before himself. But here's the brutal truth that changes everything once you accept it. Your willingness to sacrifice doesn't make you valuable. It makes you exploitable. Your selflessness doesn't make you admirable. It makes you invisible. Your constant giving doesn't make people respect you. It makes them entitled. And the more you sacrifice, the less people appreciate it, because sacrifice that comes cheap has no worth. Think about the men who command respect, the men who people actually value, the men who women actually choose. Are they the ones sacrificing themselves? Are they the ones putting everyone else first? Are they the selfless martyrs who give until there's nothing left? No. They're the ones who prioritize themselves, who protect their time and energy like it's sacred, who only give to people who deserve it. And this is the shift that most good men never make. They think self-respect is selfish. They think boundaries are cruel. They think prioritizing yourself makes you a bad person. So they keep sacrificing. They keep giving. They keep putting everyone else first. And they wonder why they're exhausted, burned out, resentful, and alone. Machiavelli said a man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything must necessarily come to grief among so many who are not good. What does that mean? It means your goodness, your sacrifice, your selflessness, in a world full of people who will absolutely take advantage of it, is a liability. Not because goodness is bad, but because goodness without boundaries is suicide. You've been taught that real men don't complain, that real men endure, that real men take the pain and keep moving. And there's truth in that, but there's also a massive lie hidden in it, because enduring isn't the same as tolerating disrespect. Strength isn't the same as letting people use you. Toughness isn't the same as having no standards. The strongest thing you can do isn't staying in situations that destroy you. It's having the spine to walk away from them. The most powerful thing you can do isn't sacrificing yourself for people who don't appreciate it. It's demanding reciprocity. The realest thing you can do isn't accepting whatever treatment people give you. It's setting standards and enforcing them. And here's what happens when you start prioritizing yourself. When you start protecting your energy. When you start only giving to people who give back. People get mad. People call you selfish. People say you've changed. People say you're not the man you used to be. And you know what? They're right. You're not the man you used to be. You're not the doormat you used to be. You're not the people pleaser you used to be. You're not the guy who sacrificed himself for people who didn't deserve it anymore. And the people who are mad about that, those are the people who were benefiting from your lack of boundaries. Those are the people who were using you. Those are the people who are upset that they can't exploit you anymore. Let them be mad. Their anger is proof that you're doing something right. Because here's the truth about sacrifice. It's only meaningful when it costs you something, but benefits someone who deserves it. When you sacrifice for people who don't appreciate it, who don't reciprocate, who don't value it, you're not being noble, you're being stupid. When you put people first, who wouldn't put you second, you're not being selfless, you're being self-destructive. Real self-respect looks like this. It looks like saying no without guilt. It looks like walking away from anyone who doesn't treat you right. It looks like demanding reciprocity in every relationship. It looks like understanding that your time, your energy, your loyalty, your sacrifice, these aren't things you owe the world. These are things you give to people who've earned them. And when you start operating from that place, everything changes. The people who were using you disappear. The relationships that were one-sided end. The women who were keeping you on the hook lose access. And at first it feels lonely. At first it feels like you're losing people. But you're not losing people. You're losing the wrong people. You're making room for the right ones. Because when you respect yourself, you attract people who respect you. When you have standards, you attract people who meet them. When you stop accepting breadcrumbs, you stop attracting people who only offer breadcrumbs. When you start treating yourself like you're valuable, other people start treating you that way too. Machiavelli's final lesson was this. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. What does that mean for you? It means you need to be smart enough to see when people are using you and strong enough to stop them. You need the wisdom to recognize manipulation and the courage to reject it. You need the intelligence to spot one-sided relationships and the strength to end them. You don't have to be cruel. You don't have to be mean. You don't have to become a bad person. But you do have to be strong. You do have to have boundaries. You do have to respect yourself enough to walk away from anyone who doesn't respect you. Because goodness without strength gets crushed. Kindness without boundaries gets exploited. Sacrifice without reciprocity gets forgotten. So here's what you do starting right now. You stop being the guy who everyone uses. You stop sacrificing for people who wouldn't sacrifice for you. You stop being loyal to people who aren't loyal to you. You stop solving problems for people who create problems for you. You stop being available to people who are never available for you. You start protecting your time like it's the most valuable thing you have, because it is. You start setting boundaries and enforcing them without apology. You start demanding reciprocity in every relationship. You start walking away from anyone who doesn't meet your standards. You start being the kind of man who people are lucky to have access to, not the kind of man who feels lucky to get attention. And yes, some people won't like it. Yes, some people will call you selfish. Yes, some people will say you've changed. Good. Let them. Those are the people who are benefiting from your lack of self-respect. Those are the people who are mad they can't use you anymore. Those are the people you needed to cut off anyway. The right people, the people who actually deserve you, they won't have a problem with your boundaries. They won't have a problem with your standards. They won't have a problem with you respecting yourself. Because they respect you too. And those are the only people who deserve access to you. So stop being the good man who gets used and thrown away. Start being the strong man who can afford to be good, because he has nothing to fear. Stop giving your power away to people who don't deserve it. Start being powerful. Start being respected. Start being someone who gives from choice, not obligation. Start being someone who's kind because he's strong enough to be, not because he's too weak to be anything else. Machiavelli wasn't teaching you to be cruel. He was teaching you to survive in a world where cruel people exist. He was teaching you that goodness needs protection, that kindness needs strength. That being a good man isn't enough if you're not strong enough to defend that goodness from people who will use it against you. So ask yourself right now, are you being good from a position of power or from a position of fear? Are you giving because you want to or because you're afraid of what happens if you don't? Are people respecting your boundaries or are you too scared to set any? And if you don't like the answers, you know exactly what needs to change. Before you go, if this hit you, if this opened your eyes, if this gave you the wake-up call you needed, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Share this with another man who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel because we're going to keep having these conversations that nobody else is willing to have. The conversations about what it really takes to be a strong man in a world that wants to turn you into a servant. Drop your affirmation one more time in the comments. I respect myself first, because that's where everything begins. Your relationships will improve. Your career will improve. Your entire life will improve. Not because you became mean, but because you became strong. Not because you stopped caring about others, but because you started caring about yourself too. That's the shift. That's the change. That's what separates men who get used from men who get respected. So make the choice. Stop being the good man who gets thrown away. Start being the strong man who gets chosen. Stop giving your power away. Start protecting what matters, because your goodness is valuable, but only when it's protected by strength, only when it's backed by boundaries, only when it's given to people who actually deserve it. Now go be that man. The world needs strong men who choose to be good, not good men who are too weak to be anything else. You got this.